The verse is, this is chapter 12, which is abiding in the self. And the verse is, the second verse, neither sounds nor other sense perceptions attract my attention. Even the self is unperceived. The mind is free, undistracted, one-pointed, and here I am. Neither sounds nor other sense perceptions attract my attention. Even the self is unperceived. The mind is free, undistracted, one-pointed, and here I am. So we've spoken about this often, where we said that once belief is taken away from the interpretation, even attention becomes very natural. So you see, the sages sometimes say that their vision is global, universal. You see, what does it mean? Very simply, it means that when we are not afflicted with this constant what's in it for me, which is coming from the mind. Right? When we look at every situation, in the past we looked at every situation with the mantra, what's in it for me? I've said that that is the Maha Mantra of the ego. You see, everything it comes to, even coming to Satsang, it is constantly saying, what's in it for me? You see, it's doing a analysis. Is this more worthwhile? Is that more worthwhile? So when this is not believed, and everything is seen as a flow within consciousness, then attention also becomes very natural. And you see it for what it truly is. Because we feel that attention is only what content bringing us is attention. You see, we don't realize that attention is bringing content to what? This self. You see, so it is seen in its whole way, that which is bringing content and that to which it is bringing content. You see? Otherwise, if you look at attention now, it might just seem like attention only is the content. You see? But actually it is not. It is the bringing of this content in view of the self. Okay? So in that way, then the self is not lost. It doesn't feel like attention is moving away from the self. Many of you will have this complaint, isn't it? That I'm not able to keep my attention only on awareness. But that would be sleep state. And attention is not there actually, means that it is dissolved into the source itself, or has not arisen from the source itself. That is the true dissolution of attention back into the source as awareness itself. Isn't it? So now, as we are not believing the constant chatter from the mind, you will find that attention becomes so natural and it doesn't feel like you are ever leaving the self. Okay? When we say my attention is leaving the self, the trouble is that we say I seem to be leaving myself. I seem to be going to the world. I seem to be getting distracted. You see? So it's so beautiful that with a simple dropping, well, it seems simple now, but the simple dropping away of the mind and belief in the mind, then attention also becomes very natural. This is the sahaj way, the natural way. The many other ways which are much more complicated. You see, most spiritual sadhanas actually are meant to give us some control over our attention. Keep your attention on the breath, keep it on a mantra, keep it on the movements of the body, trying to control attention. But at least here, I found it very, very difficult to do any of those practices of trying to control attention and keep it at particular places for long periods of time. Even if there was success in that, very quickly when other outward distractions came, it was lost. So here, as we are chopping off the conditioning, you will find that attention seems completely free to go where it is, but in that freedom to go where it is, you find that it is naturally resting in the self. You see, so although the content is perceived, but you don't feel like attention is really moving out of you. Even the self is unperceived. Means what? The self is not a phenomenal perception. That's why we make this distinction between phenomenal perceiving and awareness. You see? You are aware of phenomenal perception. You are aware of sight. You are aware of smell. You are aware of taste, hearing. You see? And ultimately, this phenomenal perceiving is also made up of awareness because everything is. But qualitatively, there is a distinction. You see? That which is aware of sight is not sight. That which is aware of taste is not taste. With me? So, when we see that this awareness remains untouched, then you find that this awareness actually, are you seeing it like sight? Or are you smelling it like smell? Hearing it like sound? None of these. You see, that's why when we ask you the question, are you aware now? That looking is not this looking, is not the looking of sight, of phenomenal perceiving. That knowing is not a mental knowing. So when the sage says, even the self is unperceived, it is not that the self is unknown. The self is the knowingness itself, the purest knowingness. Everybody got this now? Unperceived. Like, are you aware now? Are you perceiving this awareness? That's what you have to look at. Or it is a simpler knowing, which is prior to any sensory perception, even any inner perception in the form of imagination or memory. With me? That's why it's so direct, this question, are you aware now? How do you answer it? How do you answer it? It is not on the basis of some phenomenal perception. And this is unique in that way, because everything else you answer, when you confirm the presence or absence of anything else, you rely on phenomenal perception. Clear? It's very, very important, this one. Because otherwise, the journey is frustrating because we feel like, I'm not finding the self. I'm not finding the self. Because you're expecting to see it as if it will be an object of experience.
Being aware of this feeling.
Yeah.
Being aware of this feeling.
Yes, exactly. The aware, being aware of aware, of anything, you see, which is phenomenal. You're right. That is good. So in this subtle point, a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of frustration, a lot of trouble can be taken away. Because you will not say no when I ask you, are you aware now? That means the truth is already known. It is because our expectation of the truth is different that the frustration comes. We expect to find the self as if it will be an entity, as if it will be an object. But that cannot be, because all phenomena has a start and an end. You see, it has limitations. And the truth of what you are has no limitations. So the infinite one, you see, which has no attributes, where to find that? Roaming about in the phenomenal realm will not help you find the infinite one without attributes, because all phenomena has attributes. Where do I find that which is prior to attributes, which cannot be born or die, which has no size or shape? Can it be perceived through sight? It has to be the most natural insight, but not even the insight of the form of intuition, not even insight in the form of inner memory, imagination. It is the purest insight, the purest looking at the self. There's the simple question, are you aware now? And even better, who is aware of awareness? Why even better? Because many times when the experience, the so-called experience of the self happens, then we label it as, oh, that is awareness. Of course, that is untouched. That is not concerned. And in that, saying that is awareness, the mind subtly creates a distinction between I and awareness. So when I ask you who is aware of awareness, you say awareness itself. But is it not I? And a lot of resistance can come because in spirituality we've learned you have to get rid of the I, we have to get rid of the I. Say, how can awareness be I? Then who is it? Is it your neighbor? You see, who is it? So it is I, but not the I that we have misunderstood to be the I. It is the real I. That is why it is self-realization. It is not awareness realization. It is, but it is referred to as self-realization. Right? If it was a discovery of a new continent, supposedly like Columbus, it's not a voyage in that way, that Columbus discovered something outside of him, which was a new continent. It is the recognition of what always has been.
So being aware of being aware is not an experience.
Exactly.
It is going on happening automatically.
Yes, it is prior to all happening. It just is. Effortless.
Going on happening.
Yes.
Without our knowledge.
Yes. Without
Yeah.
without the knowing of this body
Knowing
mind.
of the knowing.
Yes. Even the self is unperceived. That's why we must hear these words in Satsang. Otherwise, what will happen is that if you read a line like this, even the self is unperceived, it will say that, oh, that means I'll never find the self. It will never be clear to me. I will never recognize it. If you don't know what is being talked about, then it can be very confusing. You can feel like, okay, this is why many sages said, okay, drop the search because it's futile. It is not futile. That is not the reason. It only means that you will not perceive it as if it is some phenomenal experience. You see? So if any of you still have this idea that you are not recognizing the self, you're not finding yourself, it is not your experience, it is not true. It is your constant experience. You are never unaware. Even if it feels like attention is distracted to 100 different things, who is aware of that? So you are never unaware. This is your constant, unchanging truth. You are that. This pointing you are that is for who then? Isn't it important to ask? So if I'm always aware, never unaware, unchanging, what is even satsang for? So in the play, the pointing I am that or you are that is for consciousness itself. Consciousness recognizing its own source. What am I made up of? Where do I come from? Where will I go? It's good news. So when it is seen that this is the reality of I, which is the ultimate witnessing, then automatically the stories from this mind start to feel alien. That's why there are so many alien examples in Satsang. They start to feel like the mind is talking about who? Some alien, non-existent, but just some imaginary entity. That's why it is a virtuous circle. The recognition of the self makes the stories of the mind seem alien, of honey, is it? And the dropping of the mind, the letting go of the next thought, make the recognition of the self more clear, more effortless. So when the sage says the mind is free, undistracted, one-pointed, he's speaking of the attention just being left free. And as it is left free, then it doesn't seem to be, it becomes so global, universal that it doesn't feel distracted at all. For many, the practice of one-pointedness initially is helpful. So I'm not putting it down in any way. If you feel attracted to a practice like that, then it's fine, it's helpful. But it's not a prerequisite